From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Combating COVID-19. Now that Arizona has test kits to diagnose the virus, where can you get them and how much do they cost? We'll break it all down for you.
Plus, with the Democratic primary shaping up to be a contest between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden after Super Tuesday, we take a look at what the campaign contributions tell us about the race for the nomination.
Plus, the countdown clock is ticking to get your travel IDs here in Arizona. But officials say a lot of people are slacking. We'll tell you what you need to do today to keep from being stranded later this year.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Jordan Elder.
And I'm Brady Klain. Thank you for joining us.
Today, 6 new cases of the COVID-19 virus were confirmed in Los Angeles County. This follows the new presumed case announced yesterday here in Maricopa County.
This has brought up many questions on how to get tested for the virus. Madison LaBerge is here to break it down for us.
If you are feeling the symptoms of the COVID-19 virus, like a fever, cough, and shortness of breath, medical experts recommend the first step to take is reaching out to your doctor by phone. This way, you and your medical team can make a plan if they believe you fall within the testing guidelines for the virus. A spokesperson from the Arizona Department of Health Services told me that any primary care doctor can get the samples needed to run the COVID-19 test. Doctors would be gathering throat and nasal swabs and possibly even blood samples to be run through the test. The doctor would then send your samples to the state lab to be tested. Currently, Arizona can run up to 450 samples a day. In a press conference, AZDHS said that the test can have results in a day or two. But what does it cost? Well, the answer is not clear.
We really don't have any clarity on the cost. I mean, if you kind of look around, we've heard $1,600, we've heard $3,000, we've heard people that have gone into the emergency room and, have had $3,400 bills. Now, that's a little bit confusing because it's also part of their ER bill and they might have gotten tested for other things. So there's really not a flat price. This is how much it costs to get tested for coronavirus.
The spokesperson from AZDHS told me that the state lab is not putting a price on the test and is ultimately up to insurance companies to cover. He included that the insurance company has to determine what is medically necessary for those covered under their plans. I reached out to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona to see if they would be covering the cost, but as of this newscast, they have not returned my calls. The AZDHS website is updated daily with coronavirus information. The most recent numbers from this morning showing that 34 people have been tested in Arizona so far. There is one confirmed case, one case that tested positive but is waiting for CDC confirmation, and 5 pending cases. The rest have all been negative. In the broadcast center, Madison LaBerge, Cronkite News.
It was just a week ago that coronavirus testing was being called into question as some kits distributed to states turned out to be faulty. Phoenix Congressman Greg Stanton raised concerns about those kits in a letter to the vice president. The problem appears to have been fixed, but Stanton told us we need to keep an eye on the issue.
The public deserves to know why defective test kits were sent to public health facilities. But more importantly, what are we going to do moving forward? And I want to, in my role as a member of Congress, is to ask tough questions and to hold the administration accountable, but also to provide as much support as I can to make sure that they have the resources necessary to do everything we can to fight this virus. And that's what I'm going to do always.
Stanton has been criticized the Trump administration for its response to the coronavirus, which he says has been flat-footed and lacked transparency. And after a news conference Monday when the governor and the director of Arizona's Department of Health Services described steps being taken in the state. Stanton said he's more confident the response is heading in the right direction, but he says now is not the time to relax.
When you're dealing with a potential pandemic, time is of the essence. And we did lose a little bit of time. And it's important that we be transparent and we let people know about it.
To check out all of our coronavirus coverage, follow us on Facebook and Twitter and find us online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Yesterday's Super Tuesday transformed the future of the Democratic nomination for the 2020 presidential election. Former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator of Vermont Bernie Sanders swept the 14 states voting yesterday. The former vice president surged across the country with wins in Arkansas, Alabama, Minnesota, North Carolina, Massachusetts, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Biden is currently leading the votes in Maine. Meanwhile, Senator Sanders took Colorado, Utah, and his home state of Vermont. With 79% of the votes counted, Sanders is also leading in California.
As for Mike Bloomberg, he ended his presidential campaign today and endorsed Joe Biden. Bloomberg exits the race after his single victory in American Samoa. His decision to drop ends a costly bid that saw the former New York mayor spend hundreds of millions of his own money. Bloomberg said he got into the race to defeat Donald Trump and was leaving for the same reason. And Senator Elizabeth Warren is rumored to be dropping out of the presidential race soon. Biden won Massachusetts, the state Warren represents, and she's trailing significantly in the delegate count. Despite these setbacks, Warren plans to hold a town hall in Mesa on Saturday, just a week before the next Democratic debate here in Phoenix.
With Super Tuesday now behind us, Democratic candidates will refocus their fiscal efforts on the next round of state primaries, including one here in Arizona.
Reporter Danielle Malkin joins us now to find out who Arizona voters are supporting with their checkbooks.
Put your money where your vote is. As the state's presidential preference election draws near, data shows Arizona voters are funding two specific candidates, President Donald Trump and Senator Bernie Sanders. The results are in.
We are very much alive!
And with less than 2 weeks till Arizonans voice their vote in the presidential preference election, voters in the 48th state are making their dollars and cents heard. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, President Trump takes the top spot in state campaign contributions, raising more than $1.9 million. Senator Sanders leads the Democratic candidates for fundraising efforts in Arizona, with nearly $1.8 million. Former Vice President Joe Biden fails to break the $1 million mark, but experts believe that, too, could change.
You know, Arizona wasn't a top priority for Biden, I'm sure, until this time. He needed to have a good showing in Super Tuesday. He needed to win in South Carolina. Those were his two primary objectives at this point, and he pulled them both off. I mean, his wins they were huge.
Political analysts say those leading the financial race, like Senator Sanders, hold power with individual donors who time and time again make their fiscal power heard.
Bernie Sanders is a prolific fundraiser. He's proven that time and again that he has a dedicated and loyal base of small dollar donors that give consistently. He developed that very effectively in the 2016 election, and he carried over to a significant advantage in the 2020 election.
Looking ahead to November.
Do I care? No, because we're just waiting to find out who we're running against.
Whether or not Arizona turns blue could depend on who the party sends to battle the president. And even though individual Democrats trail the president when it comes to Arizona fundraising dollars, a combination of the remaining Democrats, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Senators Warren and Sanders, and former VP Joe Biden, puts Democrats ahead of the president by over $1.8 million. In the studio, Danielle Malkin, Cronkite News.
So we want to hear from you now. As a field of Democratic presidential candidates shrinks, and with the Arizona Democratic debate coming up, are you waiting to cast your vote?
Ethel Mertz says, I usually vote by mail, but this time I waited to see who was still in the race after Super Tuesday, so my vote would count and not take away from those still in the race.
And Kirby Chadwick says, well, by the time the Arizona primary is here, there won't be much choice left. My choice will be between Biden and Sanders, and I really don't care which one it is. The only thing that matters is beating Trump now.
It's not too late to join the conversation. Just go to our Cronkite News Facebook and Twitter feeds to weigh in.
Well, starting October 1st, you won't be able to fly without an official state ID.
And even though that may seem far away, TSA and MVD officials say they're getting nervous about the number of people who aren't applying.
According to ADOT, out of the 6 million people in Arizona with driver's licenses or regular IDs, only 810,000 have applied for the travel ID.
If you still need one, just fill out the application online and make an appointment at the MVD. Make sure you bring all the appropriate documents, including a birth certificate or proof of citizenship, a document with your social security number, and 2 official pieces of mail with your name and address on them. The ID costs $25.
For those of you with a passport or military ID, you don't need a travel ID. Just don't forget it when you go to the airport, even if you're traveling domestically.
Coming up next on Cronkite News at 5, the debate over abortion rights gets heated in D.C.
Why protesters across the country, including from right here in Arizona, descended onto the Capitol to get their voices heard.
And we take a look at new legislation aimed at preventing teen suicides in our state next.
The weather around Phoenix is just beautiful today. Let's take a look at the weather around the valley.
Thank you for joining us for the special edition of Cronkite News.
Here are the top stories that we're tracking today at noon.
Some of the best players for their program.
Cronkite Noticias is the Spanish-speaking division of Cronkite News, covering topics such as economics, education, sustainability, immigration, and border relations. Cronkite Noticias strives to serve the Spanish-speaking community in Arizona. Under the guidance of prominent Spanish-speaking professionals, students at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism develop content for our broadcast partner, Univision, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Explore Cronkite Noticias at cronkitenoticias.azpbs.org.
The Supreme Court heard arguments today over a Louisiana law that requires doctors who perform abortions to have hospital admitting privileges, which opponents say restricts abortion access.
And anytime the justices take up abortion, the debate outside the court is sure to get heated, as Gabriela Collage reports from our Washington bureau.
The abortion rights case the Supreme Court considered today concerns a restrictive Louisiana law, but it drew protesters from all over the country, including Arizona. Denise Harley is an attorney with Scottsdale-based Alliance Defending Freedom, which sent several members to Washington today to rally in support of the Louisiana law.
We filed a brief with the Supreme Court on behalf of about 80 Louisiana state legislators, giving voice to their reasoning on why they felt like this was a really important and necessary law that's being argued today in the Supreme Court.
The law requires that doctors who perform abortions have admitting privileges at a local hospital. The court has to consider whether that infringes on a woman's right to an abortion, recognized in its 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. Kelly Dupes of Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona thinks it does.
Louisiana has a law that mandates abortion providers have admitting privileges at local hospitals, which really provides issues for a lot of providers. Number one, in Louisiana, you can be denied just for being an abortion doctor. And number two, abortion is really, really safe, and so abortion doctors don't send a lot of patients to hospitals.
The law's supporters say it's about ensuring the safety of women undergoing an abortion, but opponents say the law's real goal is to make abortions harder to get.
The people behind these kinds of legislation design them to put onerous burdens on closing clinics. And everywhere that they have actually been enacted and enforced, clinics have been forced to close.
Hogue and others say the law actually makes abortions less safe for women, but Harley says that's just not the case.
Simply requires that doctors performing abortions have admitting privileges so they can admit and treat their patients at a nearby hospital if anything goes wrong. It's the same requirement that doctors at other outpatient surgery centers throughout Louisiana all have to comply with.
To Dupes, the goal of the law and the case is clear.
Abortion rights are under attack.
Ruling is not expected for several months, but whatever the outcome, both sides here say they will continue to fight. At the Supreme Court, Gabriela Collage, Cronkite News.
Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey signed legislation aimed at preventing teen suicides. The House and Senate approved the measure unanimously yesterday. The legislation is named Jake's Law after a 15-year-old who died by suicide. It requires insurance companies to pay for mental health care under the same rules that apply to physical ailments. The measure directs $8 million to cover mental health treatments for children who are uninsured or underinsured. It also puts in place a team of experts to review medical records of minors who take their own lives, so they can make recommendations for reducing the number of suicides.
Right now, the Arizona House is debating a proposal that would ban transgender student athletes from playing on a team that aligns with their gender identity. The measure, backed by majority Republicans, is strongly opposed by Democrats and advocates for transgender youth. Opponents called a news conference before Tuesday's debate started to denounce the measure. The proposal is one of several making their way through the GOP-controlled state legislators this year, intended to prevent female athletes from being forced to compete against biological males. The debate appears likely to last well into the night.
And I am tracking the highest temperatures that we have seen so far this year in the valley. I'll break it down coming up in your forecast and remind you of some tips to go on those hikes.
The weather around Phoenix is just beautiful today. Let's take a look at the weather around the valley.
Thank you for joining us for the special edition of Cronkite News.
Here are the top stories that we're tracking today at noon.
Some of the best players for their program.
Hey, I'm Rick Steves. You know, I don't go anywhere without my passport. And now, thanks to PBS Passport, you can travel with me and watch all 10 seasons of Rick Steves Europe and all my travel specials. This exclusive streaming service is just for our members. Not only can you see all my shows, but you can see thousands of hours of your favorite public television shows. Become a member today and get your passport.
In order to improve traffic flow at the southern border, ADOT broke ground on its Route 189 expansion project today.
Governor Doug Ducey attended the event along with state, local, and federal officials.
Cronkite News reporter Frankie McLister was there and tells us more.
State Route 189, which is locally known as Mariposa Road, is an almost 4-mile highway in Nogales, which is in Santa Cruz County, Arizona. After years of planning and collaboration between the governments of Arizona and Sonora, the groundbreaking for the road's expansion finally took place today. The Mariposa point of entry is one of the busiest cargo ports along the U.S.-Mexico border. To accommodate the heavy traffic volume, ADOT and the Federal Highway Administration will widen the existing road, install new traffic signals and signs, improve drainage, and also build a new roundabout.
Focused on the state of Arizona, there's always going to be a dynamic and healthy competition among American states to be a better place to live, work, play, and build a business. But with Arizona being the #1 inbound state in the nation right now, that's a competition we're winning.
How the massive project came about and what it'll look like in the future when it's done, we'll have that soon. In Nogales, Frankie McLister for Cronkite News.
Parts of the US 95 north of Yuma will be closed Friday while the U.S. Army conducts artillery test firings. The 23-mile section of the highway north of Imperial Dam Road will be shut down from 9 a.m. to just after midnight. The Yuma Sun reports, while the military has been testing a different system for about 4 years now, the component currently being tested is an autoloader that holds 5 projectiles and 5 propellant charges.
Well, some good news as we inch closer to the weekend. It looks like the weather is going to be warming up.
Our very own Jordan Evans is joining us now from the Phoenix Mountain Preserve. And Jordan, I assume the valley's heating up since there are so many hikers out there with you.
Jordan, you're absolutely right. Tons of hikers have been passing behind me just in the past hour, taking advantage of our beautiful weather. This is definitely the time of year to get out and do some of these hikes. But let's talk about your forecast. In fact, right now, temperatures are beautiful in the mid-70s, 74 degrees currently, and dew points are low thanks to that storm system moving out of here. But through the evening tonight, we will start to fall off into those 60s, but still a little pleasant out there for your evening plans this afternoon and through the rest of the evening tonight. But tomorrow, we'll do it all again, but a little bit warmer. As you can see, those 80s start to come back as we get into the early afternoon. right in time for spring training kicking off at about 1 p.m. So that's when the UV index is going to peak at about a 6 tomorrow, meaning sunburn time could be just as little as 30 minutes. You want to keep that in mind if you're going to be outside during the early afternoon tomorrow. Have a sunscreen of at least SPF 30 or greater. High temperatures across the state for Thursday. In fact, all of the lower deserts getting into those mid-80s, including the Colorado River Valley, and 71 for Sedona and 62 degrees at the Grand Canyon too. So for the 8-day forecast here in the valley, we're going to continue to crank these temperatures up going into Friday. In fact, 87, that's going to be our warmest temperature so far this year. In fact, we've only hit 82, and that was just a couple of weeks ago. We'll get some clouds over the weekend as some storm systems going to start to approach us from the west. So let's show you that, because this is really interesting. Depending on exactly when this, or the position I should say, of this storm system and the amount of moisture we're going to get out of it, we could actually see an atmospheric river potentially set up for middle part of next week. So still a little early to determine exactly what that's going to look like. We'll be able to bring you some of those details coming up next week on Cronkite News. But let's break down a couple heat tips for you, because in the meantime, temperatures, heating up into the 80s as we get into the weekends. We want to show you a couple things here and just remind you of a couple of safety tips too, because a couple things that you want to remember is to simply know the trail, know how long it is, and know how high you're going to be hiking. So for example, Piestewa Peak here gains at about 1,200 feet, and the length of the trail is about 1.25 miles. So that's just something to keep in mind if you plan on some of these trails. But you also want to be realistic about your physical abilities. If your body is telling you to turn around, then make sure you turn around, because you want to avoid having to be rescued off of these mountains. Of course, have plenty of water, keep yourself hydrated, and take shade breaks possible. If there's any shade available, you'll actually want to take a shade break if you can do that. And of course, have your cell phone charged and ready to go in case you have to contact help.
Now, Jordan, real quick for you, you mentioned having enough water during the hike. What exactly does that mean?
So that's a really good question, Brady. In fact, a lot of these signs here will actually show exactly. Turn around before your water is halfway gone. So for example here, my water is a little bit beyond halfway. So if I was on a hike, I would have to be heading on the way down. That's the easiest thing to remember. You want to have just as much water on the way down as you are going up.
And coming up, from the rink to the arena.
We'll introduce you to an Arizona athlete who put down her skates and picked up her dancing shoes to perform in one of the most recognizable shows in the world.
Stay in the know on the go. At Cronkite News, we work hard to report the facts and keep you updated, whether we're on set or on the scene.
Taking it from the studio to the field. So I'm here in South Phoenix.
In Phoenix, we're just a click away. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or find us online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
You'll find there's never a dull moment in this house.
Welcome to Downton.
This house has no secrets.
Downton is catching up with the times we live in.
This calls for a toast.
Makes you want to jig about, though, doesn't it?
Heavens, we are quite a party.
Oh, goody goody.
Every day I wake up, my first thought is, how can I serve this community?
The biggest hurdle was not taking PTSD personally.
Would you welcome, please, the amazing.
Everybody that watches this, they say that I am the greatest that they've ever seen.
By the year 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Before Professor Halden, I had an insane amount of passion, but I almost felt helpless because I didn't know how to use it. Professor Halden gave me a chance to make a difference. Being at a place like ASU allows you to take these big leaps. Ultimately, the biggest problems in the world cannot be solved alone.
On the next Arizona Horizon, a special performing arts edition. We'll hear from an accomplished trumpet player, a unique saxophonist, and a string trio that combines pop and classical music. It's on the next Arizona Horizon.
One sport you typically don't see being performed in the desert is ice skating. But Cirque du Soleil's newest show, Axel, is making its way to the valley.
Cronkite News reporter Kirsten Korns headed to the Ice Den Scottsdale to get an inside look at this thrilling show on ice.
One door closed and another door open for retired Team USA ice skater Karina Monta. Monta and her partner Joe Johnson are just one of the amazing acts in the newest performance, Axel, by Cirque du Soleil. The show captures exhilarating acrobatics on ice and has allowed Monta a chance for a homecoming.
I can't wait to be coming back and performing in Arizona when we're in Tucson and Prescott Valley, so it's going to be really special.
Originally from Chandler, the Axel show schedule brought Monta back to her desert roots.
I remember being a kid training here and seeing professional skaters and really high-level skaters come into town, and it's magical to be on the other side of that now.
We passed 2 hours of stepping away from our own life reality. Some others, it will trigger something into a child or a young adult who said, I want to explore that.
Young adults from Coyote Skating Club of Arizona were able to stand in the same shoes Monta was once in. Monta focused on encouraging the group to be unique.
Always remember to have fun and find what makes you unique and bring that to your skating or whatever you do, and that can take you pretty far. So find what makes you special and bring yourself to your work.
In Scottsdale, Kirsten Korns, Cronkite News.
Axel is a blend of acrobatics, graphics, and live music.
Karina Monta and her cast will be on ice at Findlay Toyota Center in Prescott Valley from March 19th through the 21st.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thank you for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.